What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be working on my 22 TRD off-road with the KDSS. We're going to be lifting it with the Bilstein 6112s in the front with additional weight springs, and we're also going to be doing the rear with additional weight springs and the Bilstein 5100s. So I'll give you a walkthrough on how to install from home. I do live on a busy road, so it might be a little noisy, so hopefully you guys can hear me. But first things you're going to want to do when you have the KDSS model is locate the KDSS skid plate that is fastened with two 12mm head bolts, and here's the accumulator. So you're going to want to mark each one of these screws with paint marker or whatever you find suitable, and then you're going to back it off 2 full turns on each screw. Now, once you've backed those off 2 turns, you're going to want to jack the vehicle up. The 4Runners have a nice spot on the center cross member that you can jack up. I have aftermarket skid plates, but they do have the block to lift. So that's located right beside this oil door. Now, if you are running the stock skid plate, you'll notice this hole here in the middle of it, and that is your lifting point for stock skid plates. It's always important to use jack stands while working on a vehicle in your driveway. I like to use 2 pieces of wood, some steel plate, just because these 4Runners frames are high. So if you don't have tall jack stands, you can make it work. Another thing I should mention is not to turn the key on or start the vehicle when these valves are open. So don't do it. Now you want to remove your wheels. I also recommend removing these caps before pulling the wheels, because when you don't, the shoulder of the wheel nut drags along these covers and scratches them. I've already made that mistake, so I don't really care too much to scratch them. So, but if yours is new and you don't want to scratch those, take the covers off. All right, let's do the tool list. Things you will need for the job: 1/2-inch gun or hand tools, up to you. I like using the gun, makes life easy. Selection of pry bars, a few wrenches, 14mm, 19mm, 19mm sockets, a swivel head. We need a hammer. All right, I think that's about it. Let's get to it. Oh, almost forgot. A trusty stool. It's nice to have a seat on the job. All right, with the KDSS, you're gonna wanna start on the passenger side. So pull out the cotter pin out of your upper control arm. Now take these ABS brackets and just give them a little bend. That's all you need. And then you can just pop those out. Same with up here. Doesn't need much, just a little bend, and then you can get these out of your way. Just makes more room when you're pulling the control arm down, that you don't stretch these wires. And there's another one back here I should mention. Okay, that's loose. I also like to undo this bracket here on the spindle. So I got a 12mm head here, and you can also take the ABS line off the 10mm, and then just little clips here. Just get that little push, a little squeeze and a push. That's out. All right, let's take those 2 off, and then we will remove the upper control arm. All right, now that I've got my flex line bracket removed, just so it's got a little bit more movement, and ABS line completely free, you're going to want to undo the upper control arm nut. I use a swivel head on my 1/2-inch gun. Make sure it's nice and seated. Now I don't fully take it off. Make sure it's nice and loose. And then I'm going to grab our topulator here. Let's give this a couple good. Hold on. Give her a good whack. There we go. All right, now you got that loose. We're gonna want to undo the 4 14 mil nuts on the top of the strut. So I like to grab 14 mil wrench. You could also get a socket on some of those. And then I get the old secondary wrench here. Tell you if you see anyone doing this to walk away, but when it's new, they crack pretty nice. Same thing over here. Great. And then there's one in the back. Alright, they're all cracked. Once they're cracked, grab the old ratchet wrench, make life a little easier, and then just undo them. Holy smokes. Almost do them by hand. Definitely makes a difference when you undercoat vehicles here in Canada. Alright, I'm going to take those off and come right back. Alright, now that I've got the 3 nuts off the top of the strut, I want to come down to the bottom, grab your 19 mil wrench and 19 mil socket, and we're going to undo that nut and pull the bolt out. Okay, got the bolt out of the shock. Now you're going to want to remove this bolt, or this nut, sorry. Once you removed the bolt out of the strut, you're going to want to remove this upper control arm nut. So just get a pry bar, put in the spring, put a little down pressure, and boom. Take that off. Beautiful. Well, there we go. Okay, so this is why we undid these wires, because there's going to be some strain on this. You just don't want to hurt anything. But now that we got this, I kind of like to keep it out of the way, so minimum strain. Now you can pull the shock out. I will try and videotape this while I do it. Okay, so what I like to do is get my pry bar and just put it underneath this bump stop here, and I have to use the foot because I don't have a hand. I'm just going to pry it down a bit. Pry bar just let go, but anyhow, we got it. Boom. Alright, now that we got the strut loose, it kind of just falls out. Get it in a position. Gotta kind of just turn the spindle this way here. It's very hard to video while doing this all at the same time. First time YouTube video. Anywho, got the strut out. A little bit of a struggle by yourself, but it's definitely doable. You just kind of have to take this spindle, pull it over this way just so you get a little more room between the control arm, as you can see. And then you're going to pull the bottom of the strut out this way. It'll drop down there. And then you kind of just wiggle it out. And then you just slide your new one in there. But that's the hard part. Let's get to it. So, time to put these bad boys in. This is going to be proven to be difficult. So I'm going to set my phone up somewhere and try to explain. And hopefully you guys can hear me. And we'll get it in. I know it's difficult because I've done it a few times. There is easier ways of doing it. If you want to make more room, you can remove this tie rod, and you can unbolt the KDSS sway bar. But I've heard from many people it's a pain in the butt once you undo it to get it to go back into position, and I've been able to do it without pulling it. So hopefully that's the case today, and it goes in there all right. So here goes something. Okay, well, I've set my phone up there, and I'm really hoping it stays, but with my luck, it'll probably fall over and you won't see this half of the video, but let's go for it anyway. So, you grab your shock. So you gotta move the spindle a little bit just to make room. Alright, I've got it up in place. Well, I did have it up in place. grab a nut so you're prepared. It's in place, sort of. Alright, I got a nut threaded on so it can't fall. Now for the fun part. This is where it tends to get difficult. It involves quite a bit of prying. And I just got back from the chiropractor, so I'm not sure how that's going to go. But same place I put it before, right on that bump stop. As you can see, that gives us quite a bit of down travel. Okay, just like that, it is in place. I wasn't expecting it to go that smooth, but here we are. It's in. It's going to be quite a lift. And earlier in the video, I showed you guys that we loosened those KDSS valves. What that does is it allows the KDS to have full movement. It lets the hydraulic fluid flow freely through the system, so you can get more movement out of these, and that's why we didn't have to remove these. So it'll save you guys a lot of grief and work if you go this way, and you can do it by yourself. That's the main thing. Save some money, do it yourself if you're comfortable with doing this kind of work, and you'll have a lift in. I like to reuse the factory nuts. As you can tell, they have more of a shouldered collar on them, a little bit thicker, so it grabs a little more thread. So I just use those. So pretty much reverse order, putting everything back together. The only thing that makes it a little bit harder is the control arm here. It has to get pulled down a little bit further. Let me get this back together, and we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, everything is back in place and tightened up. The only thing I leave loose, just a little loose, is this bolt going through the coilover. That will get torqued when the vehicle's weight is on it. That way, if you tighten this now, this bushing is going to get twisted when the control arm goes up. So what I also like to do is just mark all the bolts that I've tightened. It just helps you sleep at night once you visually go over all the bolts and nuts, just to know that you have done them. Okay, that is it for the passenger side. I'm gonna go over to the driver's side and do the exact same thing. The front is fully installed. While I had the wheels off, I serviced the brakes and gave it a bit of an undercoat just while the wheels were off so I could get into those spots. I pull the rear wheels off and start working on her. Underneath, I use a jack, piece of wood on the diff. Same thing with the jack stands. Okay, I'm on the driver's rear side. What I like to do is just put a ratchet strap around the sway bar going up to the frame, because on the rear, unlike the front, you will have to undo the KDSS at the axle here. And if you don't strap it up, this piston is just going to want to travel down really far, and it also walks side to side. So the best thing to do is just strap it up there, so when you do undo it, it just stays where it needs to stay, and you don't have to worry too much about it. Tools for the rear: pry bar, 19 mil on a swivel, that's for your wheel, the 21, 17 for the shock, and I have a pair of channel locks just to hold this in place when I'm undoing the nut, because this will try to spin. There is a proper wrench you can get for the top of the shock, but I don't have it, so that'll do. First things first, you crack your shock bolt. As you can tell, it just wants to spin, so that's where I grab the channel locks. Well, I skipped a few steps and forgot to record, but what you want to do is just loosen your trailing arm bolt, loosen the upper control arm bolt, and with the KDSS undone, you get a lot of movement out of the axle, and you can just pull the spring out. So I'll show you on the other side. Let's do it. So you just want to crack it loose. All right, now that I've cracked that loose, got a lot more movement out of this side. I'm just going to crack trailing arm loose just to give us a little bit more. And yeah, with the shock out and everything loose, you just want to push down. The spring just pops right on out. Then you put the larger spring in, it just takes a little bit more force. And the only thing you want to keep in mind is you have your ABS wires back there. I just bend the bracket a little bit at the top, and that gives you more room. But you want to just watch these flex lines as well. As you can see, the new coil spring is much taller. Next step is you're going to want to put the center rubber isolator bump stop majig in there. And now you're going to have to do a little bit of prying down on the axle to get this in. I just come up through here, and then I pry down and pull it in. Let me put my phone down and see if we can record it. Pry bar. Find somewhere you can get in. Just like that. You have to sit on the pry bar. Oh, look all the room I got now. Flex lines still have room to move. Oh, hold on. Never mind, just twist it like a screw. Perfect. Make sure it's seated in the top in the correct location. Same with the bottom. That's all good now. So I'm going to do the other side. Same thing applies on this side. You can kind of get your pry bar under this bolt and just kind of pry down on the caliper bracket. Seems to, just want to make sure it doesn't slide off, but definitely gives you quite a bit of range. Same thing, you got your ABS wires. Just want to make sure that they're not going to stretch and break. So just keep that in mind and you'll be good. You'll be able to pop right now. Yep. All right, make sure it's seated. All right, this side's in too. Now, I'm gonna jack the rear end up, put the shocks in, and put the KDSS back in. Got the shocks in, the springs, tightened up the KDSS, tightened up the upper control arm and the trailing arm. Made sure to put a little bit of tension to mimic ride height. That way when you tighten everything down, the bushings are in their most stationary position where they would be traveling down the road most likely. So that way you're not straining these bushings too much. Okay, lift is installed. Now what you want to do is get in the vehicle and kind of stand on it. And if you have running board, you can stand on those too. And just kind of rock it back and forth. And that's supposed to equalize the hydraulic fluid in the KDSS system. And then they say to let it sit for an hour, but I think that might be a little excessive. Got the KDSS valve shut. I'm gonna take it for a drive now, and then I'll do a final ride height measurement. Ride quality is beautiful. Doesn't feel all that much more stiff I was expecting it to definitely feel stiffer, but definitely feels like it could use an alignment. Other than that though, it doesn't dive as hard as it used to when you'd brake. I did a final ride height measurement, and we're sitting about 3 inches higher front and rear. The front is sitting about 1/2 inch higher than the rear, but I am still going to be adding a steel bumper and a winch, so I think I'll leave it how it is for now, get an alignment, and once I get the bumper on, do another measurement, and stay tuned.